The wealth gap in America is something most people haven't fully reckoned with, and closing it requires big creative thinking. One promising idea gaining serious traction: baby bonds, seeding a savings account for children born into low income families, giving them a foundation to build on.
David Radcliffe at the New Schools Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy has spent his career developing the research and the policy framework behind baby bonds. He's one of the leading voices making the case for why this could work.
David, you grew up in a small factory town in Appalachia, Pennsylvania, and now you're one of the leading architects of baby bonds, which we'll talk about. How does where you came from shape how you think about financial security for families, for individuals in this country?
Well, appreciate you all having me on, and it's a great question. And growing up, and I think it's true for many of us, we don't think about like our economic circumstances necessarily because we're just living our lives. And it didn't occur to me until I came to Connecticut after college when I reflected on my growing up. It was a small town, 2,000 people, factory town, and things felt pretty good in the moment until the factory closed, and it was economically devastating, but also very hard on families and stressful. And I've come to appreciate that money matters and having it matters more, and the effect that it can have on our relationships, on our families and communities can be profound. And I've come to also appreciate that we get to choose, and this economy is not from outer space. It's something that we get to design, and the choices that we make can have an effect and for the better on the families that we love and support.
Just for our listeners who are hearing the phrase baby bonds for the first time, which sounds like a wrestler, talk a little bit about it. So, Connecticut puts money into an account for babies. Talk us through what it is, who qualifies, and what the theory is.
Yeah, baby bonds, they are publicly funded and managed trust accounts. And in the example that you noted here in Connecticut, we're the first state in the country to have this program. And what it means is that if your birth is covered by Medicaid, and in this state, that means a family of three, it's an income of about $37,000 a year. That's about $700 a week. You are automatically enrolled in a baby bond. And so
Mhm.
the state of Connecticut puts in $3,200. That's managed and invested by the state treasurer, and with interest earnings that grows between $11,000 and $20,000. And you can use it then for one of four wealth building activities: to buy a home in the state, to start or invest in a business, to put it in retirement, or towards hopefully debt-free post-secondary experience.
So, David, I like to think of you as the father, the dad of baby bonds, because you helped Connecticut get it. You understand it, and I think that there are something like 20 other states who are attempting it, but Connecticut is still the only state that's actually put it into place, and that was 2023. So, tell us about who's in it and how it's working.
Yeah, and to be fair, there are many moms and dads and others
Um,
help bring this to life. So
in my heart, though, you're the dad,
right.
but yeah.
That's very generous. But yeah, I mean, it's a lesson though, too, that, it's one thing to have a good idea, but often to bring it to life, it takes a team. And there was a great case study in Connecticut on what actually helped get it from an academic idea, which is created by economist Eric Hamilton, and to actually have it become legislative policy where the resources are benefiting real young people who are being born every day. And it's still a new program. It'll have its 3-year anniversary this July 1st. And by then, about 50,000 babies will
Wow.
automatically receive their baby bond. And now the actual the distribution won't take place until that young person turns 18. But we are also knowing and seeing, and the evidence is compelling that even just knowing that resource will be there for you can change in the nearer term one sense of optimism and hopefulness and future planning, and can also lead to better maternal and health and outcomes, and also for the young people.
So, the use of the bonds can be for many things, for education and also for buying a home, because I think as I look at the statistics, the difference in the wealth gap between those who have and those who have not is usually home ownership. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and you've teed up nicely this notion that we often think of how important income is, and it is essential. Like to afford our lives, to be able to get through the day, we need a flow of resources into our homes so we can, you know, eat and pay the utility bills and so forth. And in this time where affordability is so top of mind, income is a thing, and we need to do better at that. I know in a previous episode, you had a guest, Holly Fogel, who talked about her incredibly important work, the Bridge Project, that provides direct cash, invests direct cash in folks who are struggling to make ends meet. And so that's income with the flow of resources. Wealth is another dimension that we don't always think about. And when I talk about wealth, it's not necessarily being able to buy a helicopter or having a swimming pool, though that can sometimes be what the public sees. But wealth really is having a stock of resources. It's like a reserve so that I can afford a down payment on a home, or I can weather an economic shock or a pandemic, or to choose the community that I live in. So whereas income is a flow, wealth is a stock. And that's what baby bonds it does in terms of policy perspective. It democratizes wealth for those who may not have the benefit of an inheritance or a trust account.
I think the distinction between wealth and income is so important, and not just to purchase things, but to survive unexpected things, the pandemic or an illness in the family or some sort of crisis. When you think about kind of long-term thinking, I've always described poverty as, the inability to think long-term because you're sort of just needing to survive the moment. So how do you kind of talk about this when you're facing a population that may have more immediate needs? How do you justify it in a policy perspective when there never seems to be enough to deal with the immediacy of the needs? How have you articulated that for folks?
That was a great question. And it does come up with legislators and budget setters who represent constituents. And constituents are us and our neighbors, folks, as you note, who are just trying to afford their lives, just to be able to get by at the very least. The opportunity really is to recognize that we need to do more to help folks in the immediate, in the near term. We want and deserve affordable, quality early care and education for our children, or housing, quality and affordable health care, all the things that we need to have a full life. Oftentimes, though, that's the floor. Those are basics. Those are rights that we are entitled to and have earned. But if we are always on the treadmill of just helping people get by, and when I say we, that's us, our electeds, our communities, then we will forever be just on that treadmill, just helping to get by. And the
Right.
difference maker to our way of thinking is that it's access to capital is a difference maker. And if we can do both, and we can, because we saw it during the pandemic where we were able to help folks get by with direct cash distributions from the government to provide wages, to help with healthcare and so forth. But additionally, to be able to provide seed capital for those who aren't born with it unlocks opportunity in our economy in ways that just income and getting by alone won't.
I also think it's a great policy because the public investment today of $1 turns into $3. So the money we're putting forward at a lower level becomes something much more impactful as the kids age, which doesn't cost us anything. So it's a great ROI, return on investment for the public dollar when you're able to have that impact at the higher level for a much lower cost, and combined with other programs like affordable education or access to healthcare, you really do interrupt the cycle of poverty that is our birthright if you're born into poverty in this country. It's a innovative way, I think, to maximize our public dollar and investment. And I've seen that push and pull of like, do we fund the immediate need or do we think long term? And the critical thing in this country is we can do both. We can do both. We don't have to choose. People are worth the investment. I think that is a false choice, and I think you've spoken to the answer to it. But the reality, I think, in this country, the richest country on earth, is we don't have to choose. We can do both.
Yeah, David, talk to us about Vermont because to me that gives me the most hope working with Holly Fogel and the Bridge Project in Vermont, and doing many things, the guaranteed income as well as diapers. And tell us about the prospect of that approach, which takes care of the long range as well as the immediate needs.
Yeah, right on. And you mentioned earlier, since Connecticut passed and funded the first state baby bond program in the country, 20 other states have either introduced or seriously considering baby bond legislation. There are also 10 different pilot projects that have popped up in 9 different states, red, blue, and purple. So this is bipartisan. And the innovation that we're seeing at the pilot level on the way towards eventual public policy, both at the state and federal level eventually, we're seeing in STARS in Vermont. And started with an effort led by the state treasurer to develop a baby bond program, sort of the Connecticut style. Recognize through feedback from community and elected leaders, and to your point in this conversation, that this is great, but baby bond, the capital for tomorrow, doesn't put food on the table today. It doesn't pay the light bill and so forth. Folks are struggling in the moment. What could we do to sort of blend together people-focused investments so we can get traction both in the longer term and also in the nearer term? So the Vermont Baby Bond Maternal Health Super Bundle, it has 4 elements, and one could imagine why stop with 4? But the core 4, you might say, includes a baby bonds. So $3,200 invested by the state with interest earnings gets to that $10,000 to $20,000 threshold. So meaningful seed capital at young adulthood. It also adds direct cash, which is being developed and designed through the Bridge Project, along with some local partners. That'll provide resources in those stressful and
Right.
expensive early months after birth of a child. Also adds direct material support in the form of diapers. And diaper insecurity is a big deal, not just for the mother and infant, but it's stressful and anxiety provoking and can constrain a family's ability to get back into the workforce, to have the child go to childcare. And the fourth dimension is maternal health supports. So this evidence-based intervention called the Moms Partnership through Yale is providing, will be providing when it launches later this year, those essential maternal health supports in the early months.
I love it. And I'm with you. Why stop at 4? But that's a very good 4. Speaking of 4, on July 4th, the Trump accounts become available to citizens in this country. Talk to us about what it is and what it isn't.
Sure. So Trump accounts are a new program that came from the HR 1 federal bill that passed last year. And what they are is an investment vehicle that seeds those who apply for accounts $1,000 from the federal government, and then allows upwards of $5,000 annually from family members, employers, philanthropy, etc. So that's interesting because it has really opened up the conversation that wealth matters in America, and it's an important conversation within our policy domains, and that the federal government has a role to do something about it. The challenge, and there are a number of them with the Trump accounts, they're also called 530As, which is sort of where they nest in the IRS tax code, like a 529 college savings plan, 401ks. Those numbers represent where they sit in tax code. So 530As are in their current form opt-in. So the family has to proactively apply to have an account opened. They're also not available to everyone. It does require a social security number. And for mixed status families, that could be a challenge or barrier to participate. And I think one of the overriding biggest challenges with the 530A accounts is that, and there is a place for them. There's no doubt about it. But the real power of them comes from a family's ability to contribute to them. And as much as all of us would love to be able to do that, many of us, nearly half of Americans, are not able to afford life in the moment. So relying on outside contributions from philanthropy, from employers, could be helpful for those who are able to do that. But in many ways, this will make the wealth gap in America worse, because those who have the means to contribute will, those who don't won't be able to.
So, David Radcliffe, in terms of needing and wanting to erase the wealth gap in this country, are you optimistic with all of the approaches, the Vermont plan, certainly the Connecticut plan, and the 20 states who are considering baby bonds for, for those who are born within the Medicaid system. How optimistic are you that there will be a resolution or a narrowing of that gap?
But I'm naturally optimistic, and I think we have to be hopeful even in challenging times. Having bold policy as sort of North Star, towards an economy that can work for all of us, and we can do this. Again, the economy we have that doesn't work for all of us, we created it. So the outcomes we're getting economically and otherwise, that is happening because of the systems and choices that we've made, not just in recent times, but over generations. So we can choose another better way. And I'm optimistic there's so many people around this country and beyond who are fighting hard to build this economy that works for all of us. And baby bonds is like an exemplar in terms of gold standard early wealth building policy. And we expect it to continue to get traction and take root in more and more places so that all of us can lead the lives that we want.
What's so interesting is your work really speaks to not talking about the characteristics of a population, but the characteristics of the system within which the population is sitting. And wealth building is a system. So with the right start, you can build it. But if your family is constantly struggling to meet the day to day, I think it's a great way for us to approach something outside of the normal kind of push and pull of politics. I was also really interested. I'm sort of curious about a connection I saw in your work. You're co-chair of a working group at the March of Dimes focused on economic opportunity and birth outcomes. And I was just curious about how financial insecurity at birth connects to health outcomes. The work that I think the March of Dimes does is maybe not as well known, just like baby bonds might not be at this point. I'm just curious about the connection of that work that you're doing between those two.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing. Like the relationship between health and wealth is powerful. We know that young people who come from wealthier circumstances have higher birth weight, there's less infant mortality, families are less stressed, which can also have a spillover effect into the attachment that parents and caregivers have with their children. So if we aren't addressing wealth at birth and sort of the fair start that you talked about, what happens is that we can know with some degree of certainty that just happened to be the accident of being born into a lower wealth family will likely lead to certain health outcomes along the way. And we're paying for those as a society, as families in the community. And it's costing us more, and we're getting less effective outcomes the longer we wait. We also know through research that wealth can extend life. There's a report that came out a year and a half or so ago that if we were to do a federal baby bond program, certain groups would live 6 years longer. So beyond being less stressed, happier, having more freedom to choose, all the things that come from being in a more relaxed economic position, we can live longer. So health and wealth is a really powerful way to frame. This isn't just about economics, but it's also about like our well-being to lead lives that are happy and independent and secure.
And a more vibrant economy. People are able to start businesses and through their education, come up with new ideas and inventions that benefit all of us. I think it's the ripple effect of what you're talking about. This is a meteor hitting the pond, and the ripples could be profound beyond just the individual.
Yeah.
And we thank you, David Radcliffe, for starting those ripples.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to sharing your optimism that we can, close that wealth gap. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for your tsunami of ripples, good sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. Be sure to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
You can also find more information about our guests, and we have show notes and all of that, and about the podcast and the other events and volunteering that we're doing on our website, theinvisibleamericans.com. Thanks for being with us today. We will see you the next time.